Hi, my name is Himat Khalsa, and in this video we are going to learn how to replace a button on a piece of clothing. This is a very simple skill that everyone should be familiar with, because you never know when you might fall victim to the invisible button snatcher. First, let's talk about materials. So we have a number of things here, and this will be a part of a demo, a hands-on demo if you choose to participate in that. First, we're going to need some sort of fabric, something to attach the button to. This is a little bit thicker, and we'll use a special stitch for this material since it's a little bit thicker than some of the cotton shirts that you might see. And then we have a button. Buttons come in all shapes and sizes, and as well as colors. And so, depending on the color of your fabric, you might match a button to the color of the fabric, or you might try to contrast it if you were going for something like that. But we'll be attaching the button to the fabric, and these do have a top and bottom, so it's important that the button is face down with this rib side up, and that enables you to have space underneath the button for attaching the material. And you also want to check the size of the button. So you'll have an opening that you're going through, and as an example, you can see here our button and then our hole, and the button wants to fit nice and snug through that hole so that it can attach like that. Now, for our examples here, let's say we chose this button, you can see that that would not work for that particular pair of pants. So we measure these buttons, and using a tape measure, or this is like a sewer's tape. It's flexible and it's easy to stow. And you see this is just over an inch, and these buttons are measured in a unit of measurement called lines, and it's 40 lines per inch. So this is just over, maybe let's say this is 50 lines approximately, these buttons here that we're using. And then we have thread, and again you can choose to match the color of thread to the button and to the fabric, which is typical, or you can take your own creative liberty with that. And we have a needle. This needle has a hole that we'll be putting the thread through. In the demo I'll show you how to do that. And we have a toothpick, and we'll show what that is for a little bit later in the video, as well as a threader, a needle threader. And this is used just to basically make it easier to thread the needle. Before we get into the demo, I just want to talk a little bit about buttons, because they're actually quite fascinating. They're made from, typically they're made from plastic, but these that we're using in this demo are made from wood. Metal and also shell are very common materials that you'll find with buttons, but you can find them in glass and all kinds of different materials. And a lot of people, these are considered, in some cases, they're very crafty, but also considered an art piece. And there's some museums that show these historic buttons. Originally, actually, these buttons were predominantly used as ornamentation, so they would be attached to a piece of clothing and have no function other than just being beautiful, being a piece of ornament. Today, 60% of all of the buttons that are manufactured in China. So we get 60% of the button supply in the world from China. And these buttons can be attached in a number of different ways. We're going to just cover 3 different ways. And one is a shank. And the shank would be a piece of metal that would be attached to the back of this button, and it would hang here, and then you would sew through the shank. There's a stud version, and then there's a sew through, and we're actually going to be demonstrating the sew through, and we're going to make a shank at the bottom out of thread. So you'll learn about two of those methods of fastening in this video. When we're working with the thicker material such as this, or let's say it was even thicker like this, we really need that shank to lift the button up and give space for the material to fit underneath the button. As I mentioned earlier, we always want to make sure we check the size of the button and the hole to make sure that it'll fit. And we'll close this section with a trivia question. Who knows what cowpownophobia is? And what famous inventor is thought to have had it? We'll give the answer later in the video, but first, let's get to the fun part and sew on a button. So we're set up with our material, and in this case I've chosen orange with a red button. I just like that contrast. You might go with something a little bit simpler, and I'm using a yellow thread, mainly so you can see it in the video. I've already started this. This is a needle threader, and they come in different sizes. But you're just going to push that through the head of the needle. Push the thread. It gives you a bigger hole so you can push the thread through. And then you pull that through the needle. And then put it away. Now we're going to double up our thread. This helps to make it stronger. You want to cut about 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches of thread, just to make sure that you have enough. And then you just wet your finger, pull it along the thread, wrap it around, twist, and you have your knot, which looks something like that. And we're going to take our material and go on the underside, the wrong side is what they call it, and come up through, and we'll pick up one of the holes of the button, and we'll pull all the way through. We'll set that flat. Now this is where the toothpick comes in, and we're going to thread right around our toothpick. So let's pull that back down and get our toothpick in there in place. We'll pull that tight over the toothpick like this. This is our little trick for getting the shank. This is going to give us a little bit extra space to the shank is going to eventually give us room behind the button for the material to fit. So we've gone through here now 3 times, and this is our 4th pass, which for this demonstration will be fine. I'm doing a parallel stitch, which means that the stitches are running side by side. You can also do a crisscross stitch, which will basically give you a just a different pattern, different look. Sometimes you got to give it a little peek in order to get your needle through. But you see, we just go up from the back and down, and that's probably good. That's 4 stitches. So then we're going to take our material and fold it back, and we're going to come up through but not go through the button like this. And now we can pull our toothpick out. You see how that gives us a little bit of slack? And we're going to go around the button about 3 to 4 times, depending on your how much space you need and the thickness of the material. And then you have basically your button. And on this side, we're going to tie our knot. Tying the final knot is very easy. You're just going to go through your your previous stitches here and pull through, and just kind of do that a couple times to create a knot. And once you've done that a few times and it feels tight, then you can go ahead and cut that off, and we have the completed button. Alright, to wrap up this video, first just thank you for your attention and your time to learn this new skill. We want to thank the star of our show, the button. We learned quite a bit about the button today, and we learned that buttons come in all shapes and sizes as well as materials. Most commonly you'll see them in wood, plastic, metal, and shell. Buttons were originally used as ornamentation, and really in 13th century Germany is when they started to take on their new role as fasteners. Over 60% of all of the manufactured buttons in the world today come from China. They can be attached in various ways. We showed today the sew through method, and also attached to shank, but there's also a stud version that can be used to attach buttons. We always want to make sure that we have enough room under the button, and that's why we use the shank, as we showed today, if you have thicker material. When measuring the button to make sure that we can get in the hole, you can use a tape measure here, and the unit of measurement that is typically used for buttons is called lines. And we want to just wrap up by reviewing our trivia question. Coming back to our trivia question, kalpanophobia and the definition, that is actually a fear of buttons, if you can believe that. It's not real common, but maybe 1 in 75,000 people have it, and the famous inventor that had it was Steve Jobs, and so it's rumored that that's why we got the touch screens and some of our other innovations in technology. Thanks so much for your attention, and we'll see you next time.